the cows would come and rub on the trailer and shake it in the middle of the night because they were scratching their back. And at least that's what my parents told me. Salutations and welcome to the farm. Well, we're here for day 13 of 30 questions, 30 days. And these questions were posed to me from Marino's Mysteries. If you haven't checked them out, go on over, say hello, and tell them that Country Mama sent you. So day 13's question, let's get right to it. Oh, what is the craziest thing you did as a child that you'll never forget? Wow. Are we talking like scary crazy, crazy crazy, funny crazy? There are all kinds of crazy in my childhood. But what's one that I will never forget? Can you hear my dog eating in the background? She's decided that as I'm taping, now's the time for her to eat her breakfast. Let's see, what is the craziest thing I did as a child that I'll never forget? You know, if I'm going to think crazy, I'm going to add the danger element to it. So let's talk about a crazy, dangerous thing that I did as a kid. When I was growing up, I lived in the mountains above Palm Springs, and I lived at a boys' camp. My mom was the nurse, my dad was the caretaker, and we lived at this ranch where every week boys from the boys' club of Palm Springs would come up and they would stay at camp for the week. But when we didn't have campers and I was able to roam that entire camp by myself, I did some crazy things, and it is a wonder that I am even alive to this day. I would go out canoeing unsupervised. I ran around all the time with a .22 in my hand, unsupervised. I would do archery with arrows unsupervised. I drove a golf cart all over that place and even hit a propane tank one time unsupervised. But I think as far as like crazy that I would do while I was there by myself was I would always go hiking, and I would go hiking by myself up into the mountains. And there was always these really neat spots that I would like to go hiking to. And I look back now and it's like, oh, I'd never let my grandchildren do that. Now my boys were adventurous like that. They would probably do things like this. But I would always take this one route that would take me past an old abandoned house. The windows were all broken out. And I'm talking a house that was probably well over 100 years old. It was a house from the 1800s. And I would explore in there. I would go in there and I would be so scared. But I would always look to see if I could find little trinkets or little pieces of paper or maybe money or something that I could find. I never did find anything, but I would always look. It had its own little cemetery outside the door. They had a little wrought iron fence where they had little headstones where people were buried. But I would always do a little adventure there, and then I would go to the edge of mine shafts and explore a little bit. How I didn't go into a mine shaft and then fall to my death, I don't know, because there are times that I did. We had a counselor at the camp. His name was Peter. And sometimes we would go hiking, and we would go as far as we could go back into a mine shaft where the sunlight from behind us would illuminate how far we could go. We would go as far as we could. But if we would have had flashlights, we probably would have gone way back in those mine shafts. I can't imagine that. I think if my mother would have known that, she would have throttled me and probably booted him out of the camp as well. But I would, go explore these little mine shafts just at the edge. Thankfully, I had the smarts at the age of 8 to not go all the way in there. But then I would hike up farther into the mountains where there was a plane crash. There was a plane crash. It was an Air Force plane. And there was debris everywhere from this plane crash. And I would find bullets. And I would find little instruments, things from the panel of the instruments. I mean, that plane was just obliterated. And I would always check out the plane. And if there were pieces of the fuselage I could get into, I would look around and stuff. And then I would leave there and I would go farther up onto the hill in the mountains. And we had natural hot springs. And these natural hot springs, it wasn't just like a large body of water of hot springs, or a babbling brook of hot springs that I could just put my feet in. These were actual holes in a rock, not much bigger around than an adult. And I don't know how deep they would go. I mean, you couldn't touch the bottom. But I would just, get down to my skivvies and I would jump into those holes with that hot water. And then I would just sit there and I would enjoy the hot water with my arms on the side of this big hole. There were 2 or 3 big holes in this rock where this hot water was coming out all the time. And I did that. I was by myself. I was 8 years old. Goodness sakes, that is crazy. And you know what that makes me think of? One thing I'll never forget as a child, and it involves water, since we're on the topic of water. From the time I was 3 till 7, we lived in open cattle country, Arizona, and we were so remote we had to tank our water in. So my dad would take this big, I don't know, it was probably maybe 20-foot long water tank. It was metal. He would hook it up and he would go to where we could get water. And he would fill it up and then he would bring it back to where we lived. And it was parked behind, we lived in this really long single wide trailer out in the middle of cattle country. Cows would come and rub on the trailer and shake it in the middle of the night because they were scratching their back. And at least that's what my parents told me. The knowledge when you're an adult, the things you think about and realize maybe it wasn't the cows. So my brother and I, we would climb the ladder of this round water storage tank. And we would open the hatch and we would just drop right inside and we would swim. We lived in the middle of Arizona, and on those hot Arizona days, we needed to have some relief from the heat. And I don't know who thought of it. I mean, it obviously wasn't me. It was one of my older brothers. Let's go swim in the water tank. And I can remember it was just deep enough that I could stand on my very, very tippy toes, and keep my nose up out of the water or tread the water. But when my feet were down on the bottom, I could feel all of the rust flakes from the inside of that tank that had fallen down. It was a very old tank. And in the center of the tank was this panel, this metal panel that came down. And that was to help keep the water from sloshing when you're driving so that you don't lose control of your trailer. And we would swim under that and then come up the other side because obviously there's an air pocket over there, just like there was on this side. So we would swim down and come back, and I thought, what if our clothing, looking back as an adult, we didn't think about it at the time, what if our clothing would have gotten snagged on that and we drowned and our parents wouldn't know where we were? It would take them a long time to look in that water tank. I think my brother left the hatch open, not positive though, but I would think it would take a long time for them to realize that we had drowned in our water. And we did this several times. I have several memories of doing this as a child. And I remember saying something to my dad about it as an adult. I said, yeah, we used to swim in that water tank on hot days. And he just looked at me and goes, that was our drinking water. We were swimming in our drinking water. Of course, it was water for everything. We didn't have running water brought in from any utilities because we were out in the middle of nowhere. So that was our water for laundry and for bathing and flushing the toilet and for drinking and my mother to cook with. And we were swimming in it. And you all know that as children, we peed in that water. We're not going to climb out if we have to pee. We're peeing in the water. And we peed in our drinking water. My dad was mortified. But looking back now, I think I'm more mortified at the thought of the fact that we could have drowned in there and they wouldn't have even known where we were. So that is just a few of the craziest things that I did as a child that I can remember. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, why haven't you? Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell for notifications so that you know when I'm putting a video up. Make sure you turn the little bell black so you get all notifications. Hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed my story. I would like to know from you, what is the craziest thing that you did as a child? I'd love to hear about it. Leave it in the comments below. So until I see you again, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and have a blessed day. My dog needs to go out. And I will see you tomorrow for the next question. Bye-bye. Do you want to go out? Who's a good girl? Who's a good girl? You are. Yes. Okay, let's go.